I mean, on a personal level, I'm extremely pleased that we had these Nobel Prizes awarded in what seems like a new field. And of course, I'm happy for the people. I'm a bit closer to this world because I do develop things. I find it interesting there are two types of Nobel Prize awarded here. One's methodological, which is about making the AI as powerful as it needs to be to have impact. And the other one is very much about protein folding impact in the real world. So to me, I was thinking it's great that we have both of these because people are starting to acknowledge that AI can advance and get more powerful, and we have ways to implement these solutions, especially in the medical biotech clinical field. As a personal observation, after 20 some years of convincing people that computation is meaningful and powerful, I think to see this as a Nobel Prize, of course, makes it much easier to gain the respect for the not me, the programmers that really built these algorithms and work very hard. So that I find very encouraging. And then I think it's also a reflection on the community, like other people have said, that people are much more aware now and much more interested in what AI can do and how to implement it. Maybe that's the biggest sea change that we see. I remember a time when, bioinformatics was done by grad students only. And I think to have this go mainstream is very, very powerful. And then I think the other thing that we're seeing here is a bit of a shift towards appreciating the complexity of problems and finding the niche for AI where it can do things that humans couldn't do or would take centuries to do. And so to me, I'm emphasizing the positive here, but I do think it's a wonderful thing that we have two Nobel Prizes related to AI, and one in particular so close to our own work. So I would anticipate that we over the next decade or so we'll see many more innovations coming out of this field. And of course, I am optimistic that we will see the clinical applications where the AI is right next to the practicing physician, which is just a hope of mine. Thank you, Ingrid. And thank you, Gabi and Amina, because that was inspiring for me. So my job these days is very much to convince people and explain to people how to use this. The privilege is I'm pretty close to the patient. So I'll talk about Prevent, for instance, which is basically how I met Ingrid. And it's a good example. We have a situation here where we have, in terms of vision care for infants, the first 3 years are kind of a desert. You have one exam and then you hope for the best. And there's a real problem here because kids show up in kindergarten and have lost vision. That's what the motivator, very tangible. And so we realized there was a challenge here. The reason this wasn't being addressed was a technological one and a human one. There are very few people in the world who can actually do that job well. And a human would take approximately an hour and a half to do that. And so echoing the previous speakers, right? What we set out to do is, okay, this needs to be solved. And so we are now able to replace images with human exams with images. And the AI, of course, is instantaneous and in many cases more reliable than humans. And I'm smiling because the paper was published just yesterday where we showed how difficult it is for humans to do this consistently. And so the point here is that you can solve problems that have real impact, tangible to families, people, babies, and you can make it faster and cheaper and more reliable. And since I would live in the startup world primarily, it's absolutely essential for me to prove to people that these benefits are really there, because otherwise we can't take the next step. The power of AI is really surprising now. So for instance, one of the spin outs out of this came that once we examine a baby's eye, examine the baby's eye, we can actually identify babies at risk for genetic or genomic disorders. So everything is starting to connect here. And we need the power of AI to increase even more so that we can make these connections. We can say, this kid has a vision-threatening condition, but we may want to follow up with genomic and genetic tests and assays, tying into that ecosystem that the others described. And being able to do that at very low cost is really the goal that we have. Because I'm thinking of it, I'm going to pretend I'm a complete Silicon Valley technologist. I want it to be scalable. I want to reach millions of people every year, everybody. And to do that, it has to be cheap, it has to be easy, and it has to be sort of foolproof. That's not an easy thing to do. And I will be totally honest, our model right now is very much a collaboration between AI and the doctor. And it's very encouraging to me that the people who built the AI are increasingly interested in building these collaborative approaches, where you can literally have, we know this now through ChatGPT, you can have a conversation with the AI and say, what should I do? And so those are some real life concerns. And so we solved a problem that humans can't solve. I want to briefly mention the other company I've had the privilege of being a contributor to is Bonafide. And it's very much a completely underserved population. Women's health is still underserved. And we focused on two things that are very important. There's a disease called endometriosis, which presently takes about 7 years to diagnose and at least 7 visits. And here, an AI exam using machine learning and a multimodal approach, taking into account patient history, enables you to make a fairly accurate diagnosis with a single visit. And that means 7 years of disease progression, suffering, etc., eliminated. The other thing we are searching in a hands-on kind of approach is this idea that we want to solve problems that are just presently ignored. And I know that the people Gabi and Yamina and Ingrid work with will then help us make that relevant in the real world. And so so those are the kind of things that we are struggling with, or we're solving. And I'm always aware now, even though I wasn't when I got into this world, that we must also convince the doctors and the regulatory agencies. If we can't convince people that this is safe, that is really as reliable as we say, and that it benefits the patient and doesn't endanger the patient, then we are losing out a little bit. And so a lot of effort goes into that. And I think in my daily life, that's the most important thing, making sure that we provide a lot of information. But I always benefit from talking to other people from other disciplines that have in some ways had a 5-year head start implementing this. And so that's what my hands-on solution is for figuring out. And people solve some really complicated societal problems. About how do we manage democracy with an AI present, etc. So we're not the only ones in our world who need to think about that. I can't obviously answer the question conclusively.